Okay, so I want to do something a little different this time. I'm going to show my video of the bucks that I try to do weekly, but I'm also going to, instead of play music, I'm gonna talk you through kind of food plots here. So I'll show you a little bit of the food plots. We'll get into the bucks as well. Um, so this food plot that I'm going to be showing bits and pieces of, it's one we haven't really looked at much. I mean, you did see me brush hog it. Um, but this is the one that's sitting over on the ridge. Um, and we've just really recently started planting this one, and I'm noticing a lot of really good improvements in the herd by planting this one, just because it's always been a natural area that they go through. And you can see by the video clips that I've still got clover that's growing from last year. So best thing to do with clover that I've personally found, especially if you're wanting to plant like these white Dutch clovers, like what I've got growing, that spread. They stay low to the ground, but they do spread. It gets thick. Best thing to do is plant those in your fall food plots. What they do is they're able to take root. They get that moisture with that comes in this time of year. You know that you're instead of planting it in the spring at the end of basically the wet season and then getting into where you've got high temperatures and not a lot of rain, planting it in the fall where you're getting a little bit more moisture in the ground, you're getting heavy dews, um, they get a better grip and take a better hold on the area that you're wanting them planted in. um, so I'm actually fairly pleased with the amount of clover I've still got left here. I'm going to probably overseed with some more this year, and hopefully some more will get taken root. Eventually, I would love this plot to be just solely a clover plot, where all I really have to do every year is maybe come in and brush hog it once or twice, and just mow it down. Um, and mowing it actually does help white Dutch clover spread. Um, and that's if you do it after it's seeded, and you can notice that in the clip you'll see white flowers. That's where they get their name, the white Dutch. When those start turning brown, that means they're at seed. Mow them over. It helps spread the seed out, helps them spread, and it regenerates their growth. So they're a real good food plot. They've got high protein, um, and the deer are going to hit them. What I've found in this part of the country, in Oklahoma, where I'm at, is with this clover, it stays green almost year round. Um, I've got some in the yard here around the house that I noticed when we had the real hard freezes last year and snow. As soon as that melted and it warmed back up, it was already green. I mean, it stays green year round. So it's one of those really good ones that if you want the deer in your area to have a good browse in the winter, that stays green. It's got that high protein that they need in the winter months as well. It's a great one to get planted. I mean, it can get kind of costly. So if planting an acre of clover doesn't bother your pocketbook, great. For me, I do little bits at a time because I cannot afford to go and spend $500 on just clover seed to plant an area. That's just personally me. Other people are definitely going to be different, and there's different planting techniques for it. You can throw it on the top of the ground. You can, seed it in, disc and seed it in that way. There's a bunch of different ways that work. But anyway, so that's something else I want to talk about when it comes to food plots, and this one in particular that we're looking at. When I seed it, it's going to be white Dutch clover, turnips, radishes. I've got some kale seed for the first time. I've done some research, and that's supposed to be really good, so we'll try that. Um, but that's kind of what I'm going to be planning mostly. And then I'll have some Austrian winter peas that I'll throw in kind of in one just little general area. I'm not sure how much of that I'm going to plant yet, or even if I'm going to waste time on it on each plot, but we'll see. Um, but this plot also has going for it. In the woods where I hunt, there's a lot of oak trees. So that, if we have an oak crop this year, the acorns will drop, and the deer will be eating that. On the edge of the plot, there's persimmon trees. I haven't seen any persimmons on the trees yet. Matter of fact, I haven't seen persimmons on any of the trees that I've looked at yet. But it's still a little early to be noticing them. End of the month, beginning of next month, I'll really start trying to look to see if there's going to be any persimmon trees. But if they're loaded, the deer love those persimmon trees, especially in early October. I mean, it's like candy for them. I mean, they absolutely love it. So let's talk about the seed mixture that I talked about that we're going to be planting in this area. I love planting turnips, not just because the deer love them. I can eat them as well. So if you're going to spend the money on planting something, you might as well plant something that you could get benefit from as well if you wanted to. So we'll plant turnips there. I'm going to plant radishes. This is the first year I'm going to plant radishes. Watched a lot of people talk about how good they are for planting, how the deer like them. So we're going to try it. I'm going to try planting radishes. What I used to plant all the time was wheat. I'm not going to plant that this year. This is going to be the first year we haven't, and we'll see kind of what kind of outcome that does. The other thing we're going to try new this year is going to be kale seed. Kale's considered a brassica. Deer are supposed to really love brassicas. Kale's really good for people if you eat it. And even like my deer feeds that I buy, a lot of the deer feeds, if you look at high quality deer feed, have kale mixed into it. It's a really good brassica that they're going to like. So I'm going to mix that in. I've got 2 pounds of that so far this year. For the size of the plots, that may actually be more than enough because it's going to be mixed in with the radishes, which I've got 10 pounds of that right now. I'm going to get another probably 10 to 15 pounds of turnip seeds. And then probably 50 pounds of Austrian winter peas. And in Austrian winter peas, I know that deer love those. Some years they mow them down. Other years they not so much. It just depends on what other food sources are available that year. But this year's been fairly wet, wetter than normal. So I'm thinking there's probably going to be a lot of acorns. There's probably going to be a lot of pecans on the trees this year. And it really wouldn't surprise me if the green stays until probably even into muzzleloader season, which muzzleloader season is always the last week of October for Oklahoma. It's honestly not going to surprise me if the green up stays that long, where they've got those browse where they don't necessarily have to go to a food plot if they don't want to. So that's why we're putting, turnips, radishes, kale in that food plot, because it's going to be those big leafy lush greens that they really do like. So that's kind of the idea that we're going for. And something else we've discussed this year, we're going to try to make the food plots a little bit more consistent among all the food plots. That way the deer aren't going from the food plot on the ridge to the tower stand food plot to the box land food plot, to get different plants and minerals out of those different plants that they should be able to get in all that one. So we're going to kind of do that this year. And like I said, we are going to mix in some more white Dutch clover this year with that, with the hopes that, and the hopes for the white Dutch, mostly with the ridge stand, is for that one to get a good solid base, even if it's only half of that food plot. Now that food plot's not very big. We're talking 50, 60 yards by 10 yards. It's not a big food plot. It's a little bit smaller than the tower blind food plot, than the one over by the box blind where my dad hunts all the time. You've got an area that's about 5 yards wide at the widest, It is long though. It's I believe it's 80 yards from the box blind all the way down, and then we've got a round spot off to the south of the box blind that we typically plant. It doesn't do as well there because there's an ant hill there, and the ants usually kill a lot of the plants and stuff. But we will try to plant that this year, and by putting the radish in particular there, where the radish is gonna get in the ground. If the deer don't pull them up, it's gonna draw moisture all winter. It's gonna rot, and then come this time next year when we're planning on planting, it should help the soil there a little bit. So that'll definitely be good. So let's talk about two other aspects real quick of the food plots. Number one, like I mentioned in the last video, is pigs. I'm not sure how the pigs will react to the radishes and the kale. I've never had experience with that. I have had experience with turnips. They do not bother the turnips. At least they didn't last year and the year before. So I'm planning that's going to be the same this year. The peas, I haven't seen them bother them either. Now when I've planted wheat, I have seen them get out into the wheat and eat that before. And not to say that they probably wouldn't eat the turnips, the radishes, the kale, and the peas. I'm just saying from experience, the turnips and the peas they haven't ate from before. But then again, we do have a lot of oak trees on the property, and I've noticed even if we set the trap with corn, I mean, we could put 50 gallons of soured corn in there, and they would leave it alone as long as there's acorns on the ground, and they'll be in the woods eating the acorns. But just know that the reason we are going the way we are is we haven't experienced any issues with the pigs with this type of food plot. Idea being that with the kale, they probably hope they won't bother, and then also with the radishes, we're hoping that they'll leave that alone as well. And that kind of brings us into kind of the next topic that I want to talk about with the food plots. So with our food plots, sometimes we do put corn into them. And I'm not talking about planting corn. I'm talking about baked corn, with a feeder or piling it on the ground, whichever works best in your area. For us, even with the big mature bucks, I can walk in there with my boots, put some corn on the ground, and walk out. I will get better results than using an actual feeder. We've tried feeders before. I've tried the homemade PVC ones that you put on the side of a tree. Hogs tore that one down. The automated ones, it's got the spinner where you program the times. I've tried that. Hogs tore that one down. The good thing about putting the one on the ground, if the hogs get into it, I don't have something getting broke that I spent money on. I'm just losing dollars in how much corn they eat. And then all I have to do to change the hog's behavior is stop putting that corn there. The hogs will leave. As soon as the hogs come in, they see there's no corn, they will leave literally that day. And you won't see them there really for a while. The deer, on the other hand, it doesn't faze them much. It's kind of like candy for them, so that does draw them to that food plot. But they're going to come into that food plot regardless, as long as the hogs aren't there when they're there. Now, if the hogs come in at the same time the deer do, you've got a problem at that point. And we have had that problem in the past. And that makes things unpredictable. The time of year that I really chase hard on the food plots is the same time of year that the hogs are typically not on the property, and they're out chasing acorns. They're still tearing up the farmer's ag fields. So there's that thought process as well. And I know there's a lot of people out there, oh, you hunt over a bait pile. That's not hunting. Well, you can say that all you want, but it is. It's if it's legal, then it's hunting, and that's that. I'm not going to argue with a person over it, because if it wasn't legal, then you're right, it wouldn't be hunting. But in Oklahoma, it is legal, especially on private property. Um, so I hope you guys like this. Let me know in the comments if you prefer listening to music while you're looking at the bucks, or if you want to hear more discussion about, food plots and other kind of things that you can do to prepare for your season while you're looking at the deer of the farm.